I'm going to ask Peter and Martin to rejoin the guys if they would, and we'll do a panel Q&A. And I'm going to open it up to questions from the floor. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask either Peter, Martin, or Robert or Jim? This gentleman in the grey suit will take you first, and then the lady in the black, we will take you next. And anybody else, if you fire up a hand, I will come round to you as soon as I spot you, which with the lights and my advancing age may be slightly tricky. Sir, will you give us your name and your question, please?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Larry Egan. I'm the head of the medical school here at the University of Galway and a consultant physician in Galway University Hospitals. So I just came from my rounds this morning to come over and join the meeting. It's an absolutely fantastic initiative. My question is more of a comment maybe, but if you could react to it, it'd be interesting. You know, if you look at Sláintecare and the 8 key principles of Sláintecare and the reform program arising from that, research just doesn't really feature very highly at all. So my observation would be that, you know, is what we're talking about today, clinical trials, clinical research, the benefits of having a research-intensive, you know, clinical environment, is that on the political agenda? I mean, is there support? I mean, I think everybody here in this room gets it, but, you know, do politicians get it, and is it prioritized or not at that level?
Thank you. Robert?
Of course the politicians get it, Larry. Of course, how could possibly suggest otherwise? How could you suggest otherwise? No, look, it's not necessarily a core element of Sláintecare. You're right. Sláintecare, as you know, encompasses many different reforms and initiatives right across the whole gamut of issues the health system faces. So research, Jim is more involved in Sláintecare than I was originally, but I don't think research does feature. But in terms of what we need to do, just give you one practical example. In your institution, we're aware that attracting in this new contract that we've negotiated, Sláintecare contract, we know to attract the best people back, and a lot of your colleagues who've gone away who may be thinking about coming back, we need to have hospitals with great working conditions, good pay and all the rest of it, but also which are research focused, which are leading edge. And we know that. We hear this all the time when we talk to prospective consultants. They'll come back to Ireland. Of course, they need to be remunerated properly, the pay needs to be proper, but they want to work in a collaborative environment, they want to work in a research-intensive environment, and they want to work in a hospital near a university. So we get this all the time. So while it's not integral to Sláintecare, Larry, it is absolutely essential, I think, to what we're building. And we're also aware that, as I mentioned earlier, we have all these demands of the system, and you know in your area, endless demands, and we need to figure out how to prioritise what works, what doesn't, and that requires research, it requires clinical trials, it requires all the different evidence. So I think it's an integral part of what we're doing, based on the conversation we're having this morning, and we can, Jim and I can reflect about some of the things that have been said, and we can see, can we augment and build on what we've done to really ensure that it's a much more central part of what we're doing for the future.
Larry, I think, so you're probably right about the cross-committee report that was Sláintecare. I think there are elements that are baked into the government's response, but you touched on it, Anton, and you have now, Larry. I think there's an elephant in the room, which is the huge service pressure that people are under. And when you're talking about investing time and effort into things when the queues are out the door, that's seen as a trade-off. And that goes right up to the political level. At the political level, there's an urgency to getting waiting lists down, there's an urgency to tackling trolleys. It's the same right across government. The housing crisis, and I'm there trying to say, well, actually investment in research and innovation should be to the fore of your thinking, and people want to build houses. So how do we help people to get out of that? I see it like when you get into a really rough sea, and you have all this white water that's coming over your head, you have to swim a little bit out of it. We have to get a little bit away from that. And research and development is really important in directing where we should go with that. So it's important that there's an articulation of this at every level, at the service delivery level, from universities, from government departments and politicians, that there's a way forward here which isn't about a trade-off. Actually, they're both servicing the same ultimate goal. And investment in this is actually part of resolving service problems.
Okay, Peter, I think you want to come in as well?
Yeah, I just might add one thing briefly to that. I think as an academic community, we also have to do better. We have to be better at telling and explaining why what we do is important. And events like this over the last couple of days, I think are central to that, because they're shining a light and creating some attention around what we're doing. The fact that both Robert and Jim have have joined us today, I think is also really, really significant, because my sense is that we at least have a system that is listening, but it's still up to us as academics to make sure we tell that story, we make those requests, we be those leaders, Robert, that you mentioned earlier.
Martin?
The concept of research is expensive and it's focused on new treatments that will cost more. A large proportion of research in clinical trial research, the example that was given today, you can evaluate more efficient ways of doing it, shorter courses, right? Less expensive medications, lower doses. So clinical trials, it's not just, and some people get this message, well, if we invest in clinical trials, it's going to cost us more because it's going to be new treatments. Our vision of clinical trials is that it's going to be targeting value-based delivery of care, as
Or
well
even
as new
to
treatments.
take Saeed's example yesterday, where you get an uptake in what is an immediately life-improving, already available therapeutic response. We had another question here, and then have we somebody else who wants to follow? Yes, we have one over here then next. So yes, and then we'll come to you, sir. So we'll get a microphone over here. And again, if you can just give us your name and your question, and then we'll come over to this side. That's okay. Go ahead.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nicola Wall, A40 Development. So I've worked in clinical research for over 25 years and run a company here in Galway. But actually, and this is wonderful to see, but I suppose my key question is, what is the role for external providers and industry to work together effectively with institutions like this? So Peter, I won't put you on the spot, but it would be great to just get some feedback about the fact that, you know, that this has to be a collaborative process and it has to involve, you know, kind of external experts as well, and or maybe what the vision for that is.
Great. Let me focus on the but part of I won't put you on the spot, but.
Happy to take that one, and I'll give firstly a philosophical answer, which is I truly believe that the complex problems that our friends and families, our patients, our society face on a daily basis are way too complicated for individuals, for single groups to tackle on their own. The creation of collaborations, working in multidisciplinary groups, interprofessionalism, is what's needed to solve those problems. These are not simple problems, just like housing, just like climate change. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is we're very committed, and we articulate this within our strategy, to partnering widely. We have a strong track record already of partnering with industry partners. We see those as vital to achieving the step change in research that we want to achieve. We want a partner to leverage their expertise, to leverage their pipelines, but also, and Robert made this point earlier, you know, in industry also is a source of funding for a lot of the clinical research activity that happens in this country and others. So we're right to the fore in terms of partnerships, and again, we see that as a way of solving really difficult problems.
Gotcha. Thank you, Peter. We have a question over here, if that's all right. Yes, sir. Same drill, name and question, please.
John Given, Chief Pharmacist for Galway University Hospitals. This is more of a statement, but there is a huge drug cost saving from my area for clinical trials, because these patients are getting treated anyway. But if they're on a trial, the companies are paying for the standard of care arm or the trial arm. And there's also these patients get their scans, they get everything paid by the drug companies. So there is that advantage. Now, the issue we're having coming down the line that's going to happen is, say, for example, CAR-T drugs. There's 2 of them licensed by the NCCP and approved for funding. We as a country are not going to be able to afford to give everybody those drugs. But if we put people on trials, we basically get them for free. And as long as you have what Martin has originally set up, you have that base core, it's easy to add in these trials on top. Certainly the drug trials are easier to add in on top, the international trials. So there is a huge saving to the state as long as the basic structure is there and consultants are willing to take on trials as PIs and add it in. So it's more of a statement than anything else.
Gotcha. Robert, do you want to react to that?
Jim? Maybe just linking the two things. I agree absolutely, and I think part of the reason I'm here is I think Galway has just a huge opportunity here. People have referred to the ecosystem that surrounds Galway. When you see Dexcom going to Athenry, didn't go to Galway City, you realise just the scale of what's going on over here. And when you see the type of opportunity for BioInnovate, for spin-outs, for all of the investments, the CRF that has happened here, But it has to be, and this is where the ambition of this initiative comes from, it can only be achieved when people realise that what got us here won't keep us here. This is a game that is really moving fast. The technology is moving, the players are moving all around the globe. So the ecosystem has to come together, just as the last questioner had, and all of the elements have to hang together. That's Robert and I, but it is also enterprise. And the university, as a pivotal player within that ecosystem, is going to be really important, not just for the university, but for everybody who seeks to make a home in this part of Ireland.
Robert, can I get you to pick up on that industry thing? Because obviously you will be dealing with a lot of the big industry players in this space. And we heard yesterday from Novartis, and Novartis's desire to do as much of the way as possible as clinical trials in Ireland. How significant do you think it is as an FDI driver for industry, and how live or concerned are they about clinical trials and research in this country?
So I think it's part of the offering now, the new part of the offering, because as Jim mentioned, things are evolving. So many of these companies that are in the West or other parts of Ireland were here for particular reasons. Those reasons evolve. The world changes, technology changes, the next round of investments will be coming. Our competitors out there have new offerings. So this is something else that we can say. We have hospital system, we've got talented people, we've got a university, now we have this infrastructure around clinical trials. And all the time, so I met a company, I mentioned them, it doesn't matter, Abbott yesterday, some of their people were here, and I met them when we were chatting about, again, they're investing in a significant company, 5,000 people in Ireland across a whole variety of areas again. So what is going to keep them, companies like that? It ultimately is our offering, and it's human capital, it's the infrastructure, it's leadership. These are the things that we have to, and we need to keep on improving, looking to the future, being strategic. And as mentioned, the IDA are looking at the cell therapy and cell development. So that again, look to what does the future hold? What are the new technologies? What are the emerging areas? And we need to be there. But of course, we need to have all the different aspects of the offering to make it attractive for those companies.
Peter?
Completely agree. And I think, and I mentioned this earlier about the universities and the academic community standing up and being part of that. I think that's one of the really core elements of what we're trying to do here. Part of our vision is that we're part of that. We see ourselves as part of an Ireland that's progressive, that's trying to make sure we're consolidating our positions. So as we say in our strategy, almost the least of the impact of the Institute for Clinical Trials will be just on the number of clinical trials. Rather, it'll be about how we transform the region and indeed more broadly, how we impact Ireland.
Got you. Further questions, folks? Anybody else? Yes, we have one here in the front, and then I'll come to you next, sir. Yes.
Good afternoon to you all. I'm a case study for all of you as how you can do consortium. Personally, my name is Munir. I'm a co-founder of a company called Genicity, a company that works in a cancer field offering a CAR T, allogenic CAR T. Basically, I'm Arab Palestinians who relocated from Israel through Enterprise Ireland, and we are a case study for all of you. So we have moved all of our innovation to here because of the infrastructure that you all offer. We have faced many barriers as a company, as a founders. The funny thing that we have already moved only 4 months. We are already part of Enterprise Ireland. We moved to Galway University. What we would love to answer, it's a very simple question. How cancer trials over here and the clinical trials see themselves operating with companies that outside of their university? What are their plans for cancer trials for the future? And how the enterprise to bring minds over here. One of the problems that we faced is that we don't have a clear plan. Like, you're a company that coming here. Here are the operation that you can have, the help that you can have, because everything that you do, you give. There is infrastructure for everything. There is knowledge that you have as an Irish society for everything. It's brilliant, but there is no contacting with each other, and it's give you a barriers. How can you do things, and it will be easier. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Peter, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take that. And Munir, I know you've reached out, and we're going to be meeting in the next little while, and we can discuss that in more detail. But let me talk about oncology more broadly. And I don't know if you were here for my opening remarks yesterday morning, but I spoke to this specifically. The cancer therapeutics market is anticipated to be $270 billion in the next 5 years. We have seen a doubling of the number of clinical trial starts in oncology over the last 5 years. And at the moment, if you look at clinicaltrials.gov, there's about 20,000 cancer clinical trials ongoing. They've also delivered extraordinary impacts for our patients. You only had to see Kate Cameron's video just beforehand. So we're very committed to supporting, developing, and expanding not just the amount of oncology clinical trials that we do, but also the impact of those. We believe that we should be doing earlier phase, higher impact, higher value to both industry, but also to our patients' oncology trials. We are doing a significant piece of work around that with my colleagues, Michael Curran, also with Professor Aoife Lowry, who will take over as lead of our clinical research facility. So we're building an infrastructure that will certainly prioritize oncology clinical trials, will allow us to engage externally, and indeed we'll be looking to partner with the best so we can deliver the best for our patients.
Okay, I know we have another question here, and then I'll take one more thereafter. We have one down the back, is that right? Okay, so we have this. Was it this gentleman over here want to ask one? Did I miss somebody? Yourself, sir? And then, okay, we'll go one and then two, and that'll be us. Yes.
Michael Kern, it's great to see two of the most powerful people in Ireland up
and
there.
Jim and Robert.
Up there with
Anton's not that powerful.
with Jim and the other fella at the moment. You're very welcome to Galway, and we're really delighted to host you. And I think we must be on the cusp of greatness. Just from my point of view, I've been here with Tim O'Brien for the last 20 years, and we've made some great progress at levels. And I think some of it has come from the programs from research and third level institutions. It's amazing to come over to this university today. It's where I came through the medical school and where I've invested most of my career and so on. But it's such an amazing, it's been set up to be successful, and you can just see the branding and everything and ability to recruit and develop and so on. Now, the contrast with the physical, people keep talking about infrastructure, right? The physical infrastructure in our hospital is poor. And I'm frustrated because with a lot of great help from a lot of very important people, we've managed to get the cancer centre, there's 4 of them in Dublin, we've managed to get the cancer centre onto the National Development Plan. And what I'd like to ask the two of you is what you would do if you were me to try and create this kind for infrastructure that will allow us to deliver a research-rich, really active, productive program that will allow us to recruit, retain, and develop the next generation of people in an environment with innovation and research at the heart of it. So that's just a question. What would you do if you were me in that setting?
And will you pop that mic over there? And Robert, do you want to come in on that?
So I think, Michael, I think it's accepted that significant investment needs to be made in University Hospital and the health facilities in the city. Everybody accepts that. Minister Donnelly was here last week. He spoke to your colleagues. I think he gave a commitment in relation to the plans. I think it's accepted that in Galway and in Cork in particular, their infrastructure deficit need to be addressed. I'm here the next few days again talking to your colleagues in the hospital tomorrow and on Friday, and I'll be listening and talking about where we go from here. So it's absolutely accepted that the infrastructure is not good enough. And I just make a general point here about planning, and it's something that Jim and I have been involved with for a long time. We're conscious of. In some areas, we've managed to plan very, very well. Like if you look at this institution, I worked here 20 years ago with previous presidents on different plans, and if you look at the motorway network, so it took 2 hours to get from Dublin this morning. If you look at some areas of planning, motorways, higher education, we've done incredibly well. Other areas, and this is not a criticism now of the past, but in health we haven't had the same strategic approach to infrastructure, and we need to do that. And that's what the Minister is committed to doing, and I think there are clear deficits here which we need to address.
I'll just finish in 1 second, guys, by asking Robert and Jim as our guests, given that this is the sort of the inaugural meeting, the kickoff of the Clinical Trials Institute, the final thought I might get from you is the advice that you would give to the Institute so that it can be successful. So we might just finish on that But before that, we have one final question. Yes.
I'm Bill Potterly. I'm currently in St. Louis, and I was invited to give the keynote yesterday. But in their remarks on the stage before the two Secretary Generals came up, Martin and Peter referred to the NIHR, which is the research arm of the National Health Service in the UK. And it's worth thinking a little bit about the history of that, because the NIHR was started in 2008 after a group of academics led by Sally Davis in London went to the British government and said, the National Health Service, any modern organization, needs to have an R&D function to improve the National Health Service. And they got ring-fence funding. The minister they convinced was not the Minister of Health. It was the Treasury Secretary, Gordon Brown. The NIHR has been an incredible success, not only for the development of academic clinical research in the UK, but also for the improvement in the quality of the NHS, and actually had a worldwide implication because the most rapid, effective COVID trials were done by Recovery, which was led through the NHS. So it's surprising to me, as an outsider, that nobody has really addressed what I would regard as the elephant in the room. And that is, where is the R&D function of the HSE? Why isn't there a ring-fenced funding for R&D in the HSE? Given the size of its budget, given its importance to the future of Ireland, why is that still neglected?
Bill, thank you. Robert?
It's a good point, and it's a good challenge. Like, clearly there isn't an earmarked budget the way you describe, which is relevant in terms of the NHS in the UK. There is research spending, there's research-related activities all across the system, but it's not described as such, and it's not coordinated perhaps as well, and it's not ring-fenced, as you said. But I think it's certainly it's a good argument, it's a good challenge. And if you look at, you mentioned the COVID research, like that research that was done through the NHS was incredibly impactful, incredibly powerful, and we all benefited from that. Like our CMO at the time, and Jim was involved in that when he was in health. Like that was really impactful, and that had an enormous benefit to all countries who are grappling with those problems. So no, I think it's a fair point. It's something which we'll come back and we'll talk to our colleagues in the Health Research Board and the other relevant agencies. And it certainly is a challenge, because I think we all accept that research, innovation, new ways of working, new ways of doing things needs to be core and embedded in health service into the future.
And Robert, I recognise that you can't make policy sitting on a stage, but that has been one of the consensus areas that has come up repeatedly, which is that issue of ring-fence funding. So when you say you will take it away, you'll take it away with some enthusiasm?
Emboldened with enthusiasm, Anton, emboldened with enthusiasm. No, I think we just need to be careful about what we understand about ring fences. So in our world, there's a budget, 24 billion, and then it's allocated to different elements. Within the health system, there are allocations across, and within that, there's research activities. It may not be necessarily ascribed or identified as research, but I think the point the gentleman was making, which is a good point, is that within the HSS, there is a greater commitment around a ring-fence budget which is dedicated, and everybody knows that's its purpose. Now, I think it's something to look at, but of course, as everyone knows, the demands are never ending. But it's certainly, I think, something worth exploring. Again, if it makes sense, does it make sense for us? Does it make sense in terms of improving outcomes for patients? That's ultimately the test that we assess it against.
To close us out then, gents, the view from the lofty heights of your Secretary Generalships, the advice that you would give to the Institute, you've heard the ambition that is here. If you were saying, well, look, here's the thing from our perspective and from the government and civil service perspective that we'd recommend, or the bit of advice that we would give. Jim?
Just to go back to Bill's, because I think I agree with the profile that this area has across the water. We tend to now, because of Brexit, pick on our colleagues across the water and think they're doing everything wrong. They've just set up a Science, Technology and Innovation Department. The kind of work that you talked about, Bill, with Sally Davis, the work on genomics that was absolutely crucial when COVID arrived, and that we all drew off. So building out those platforms at scale is something that they're actually willing to do across the water. I don't necessarily, so I think there's a huge amount of work, and I can see Anna Teres and the team doing it in the HSE. There's a huge amount of support that they should get. There's lots of things that the HSE can only do. So the ethics, getting contracts in place, getting processes nailed down. But we have a really great resource in the HRB. We're about to set up a new research and innovation agency, but I wouldn't be for setting up new agencies in a small country over and over. We're bringing two together rather than setting a new one up. I think the HRB does a really good job. I think the challenge for health is to get the HRB and the health service working really well in sync, and the university is contributing to that. And I think there's a lot of rich work to be done on that. When you've asked for advice, and Michael did as well, Michael, I've seen you operating for 20 years with all your energy and your passion. The last thing you need is my advice. My mother used to say, don't teach your granny how to suck eggs. I think Peter and Martin are the same. The importance now is to have ambition, to have the right people, and to be really, really positive and taking on the opportunities that are there. But it's all about ambition. I think that's what the country's crying out for now, and you don't need my advice because you have everything moving nicely, and I'll give you any support we can into the future.
Robert, do you want to give us a final bit of egg sucking?
Yeah, no, I don't give advice either to people who like what I would say, and I think echo what Jim said, ambition is critical, and related to that is don't be afraid to fail. I think within the public sector we have a real problem around failing. You need to fail quickly and move on. And if you don't fail off enough, you're not trying enough, you're not innovating enough. So really, that's, I think, to have the courage to go for things and be ambitious. And that's not advice. That's just a general comment.
Gents, thank you very much. Robert, Jim, Martin, and Peter. You're off the hook, folks. Thank you.